A mother who sold her 15-year-old son to wealthy men for money, a mother who monetized her daughter's death before the body was buried, and 22 more family betrayals that destroyed Hollywood's biggest stars, each one documented, verified, and more twisted than you can imagine. Montgomery Clift, the mother who sold her son. Montgomery Clift possessed the kind of raw sensitivity that revolutionized screen acting. His performances in films like A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity showed a vulnerability male actors had rarely displayed before. But behind that remarkable talent lay a childhood secret so disturbing that it would poison every relationship Clift ever attempted to form. His mother, Ethel, who insisted everyone call her Sonny, was obsessed with social status, but lacked the financial means to achieve it. Patricia Bosworth's authorized biography revealed that Sonny began introducing 15-year-old Montgomery to wealthy older men who became his patrons. These were affluent gentlemen who provided financial support to the Clift family in exchange for access to the beautiful, sensitive teenage boy. Sonny arranged these relationships with the calculated precision of a business manager, ensuring her son understood that the family's social advancement depended on his cooperation. Clift developed dependencies on alcohol and pills, engaging in increasingly self-destructive behavior. Friends reported that he could never maintain a healthy romantic relationship, alternating between desperate attachment and sudden withdrawal. The vulnerability that made him such a compelling actor was the permanent mark of childhood trauma. When Clift passed away in 1966 at age 45, he had never confronted Sonny. The mother who had sold him to wealthy men for profit attended his funeral and showed no recognition of her role in destroying her son. If you thought Clift's mother was monstrous, wait until you hear what Barbara Payton's mother did. She turned her passing into a payday before the body was even buried. Barbara Payton, the mother who monetized her daughter's destruction. Barbara Payton burst onto screens in the late 1940s as a promising actress with striking beauty. But her descent from stardom to working as a lady of the night on Sunset Boulevard became one of Hollywood's most tragic cautionary tales. What made the tragedy even more horrifying was that her own mother actively profited from every stage of Barbara's destruction. Payton's autobiography, I Am Not Ashamed, documented how her mother contacted Confidential magazine and other tabloids with detailed accounts of Barbara's work as a lady of the night, her substance abuse, and her affairs. Each magazine spread brought the mother money while driving Barbara deeper into despair. The ultimate betrayal came with the publication of Payton's autobiography in 1963. Her mother negotiated the publishing deal and kept most of the advance payment, leaving Barbara with almost nothing. 2 years later, when Barbara passed away from liver failure at age 39, her mother immediately sold the exclusive story to tabloids before Barbara was even buried. At least Payton's mother waited until Barbara was an adult. Our next star's parents controlled her from childhood so completely that she would need 15 years of therapy just to learn how to buy a sandwich without permission. Piper Laurie, 15 years to learn how to live. Piper. Laurie seemed to have everything as a young actress in the early 1960s. She had been nominated for an Academy Award for The Hustler and was considered one of Hollywood's most promising talents. Then, at age 29 and the peak of her career, she simply vanished. She would not return to acting until 1976, 15 years later. The truth, which Laurie finally revealed in her 2011 memoir, Learning to Live Out Loud, was far more disturbing. Her mother monitored every aspect of her life with suffocating intensity. She controlled all of Laurie's money, keeping her daughter financially dependent well into adulthood. Piper, at age 27 and earning thousands per week, had to ask permission to buy a sandwich. Her mother sabotaged any romantic relationships and selected Laurie's clothing every single day. Most disturbingly, she had convinced Laurie that she was incapable of making any decisions without maternal guidance. The Oscar nomination in 1961 triggered a complete nervous breakdown as Laurie realized she had achieved everything her mother wanted but had no idea who she actually was. The 15-year absence from Hollywood was a psychological necessity. When she returned to acting with Carrie in 1976, playing an abusive mother took on special significance, and her performance earned another Oscar nomination. She had taken her pain and transformed it into art. Laurie didn't just survive, turned her prison into power. But not every sibling rivalry ends in redemption. Some feuds burn so hot that sisters pass away hating each other, taking 76 years of resentment to their graves. Joan Fontaine and Olivia de Havilland, the 76-year feud. Joan Fontaine and Olivia de Havilland were both extraordinary actresses who achieved the highest honors in their profession. Joan won the Academy Award for Suspicion in 1942. Olivia won twice for To Each His Own and The Heiress. Both were elegant, talented, and respected, and they despised each other with an intensity that would span more than 7 decades. The rivalry exploded into public view at the 1942 Academy Awards ceremony. When Joan Fontaine's name was announced as Best Actress winner, her sister Olivia had also been nominated. As Joan made her way to the stage, she extended her hand to congratulate Olivia. Olivia visibly turned away, refusing the handshake in front of the entire audience and the cameras. The moment of humiliation was broadcast to the world. From that point forward, the sisters maintained an impenetrable wall of silence. They attended the same industry events, but never spoke. When their mother passed away in 1975, they attended separate memorial services. Joan Sharon passed away in December 2013 at age 96. Olivia did not attend the funeral. She made no public statement. When Olivia herself passed away in July 2020 at age 104, she had spent the final 7 years exactly as she had spent the previous 70, refusing to forgive a handshake rejection that had occurred 78 years earlier. The de Havilland sisters' hatred was public knowledge, but most stars hid their family secrets far more carefully, like the actress whose studio literally selected her husbands as if casting co-stars. Ann Sheridan, the studio that scripted her marriages. Ann Sheridan became Warner Brothers' oomph girl in the 1940s, marketed as the perfect combination of beauty and approachability. But behind the sultry image was a woman whose studio literally arranged her marriages like script assignments. Her first marriage to actor Edward Norris in 1936 seemed romantic to fans. What they did not know was that Sheridan had become pregnant, and Warner Brothers had orchestrated a rush wedding to avoid scandal. Then the studio arranged for her to end the pregnancy. Her second marriage in 1942 to George Brent raised eyebrows because Brent was 20 years older. The studio didn't just arrange the marriage, they scripted the proposal. Brent was handed lines to recite. The ring was studio property. Even the honeymoon location was contractually mandated. By the time Sheridan married Scott McKay in 1951, she had finally broken free from studio control. Friends asked why she didn't leave Warner Brothers after the first forced marriage. Her answer, "Where would I go?" Every studio operated the same way. At least here they knew my name. Sheridan's studio controlled her marriages and forced her to end a pregnancy. But our next star's family did something even more fundamental. They erased who she actually was, forbidding her parents from attending her own premieres. Kim Novak, the actress who lost her name. When Marilyn Novak signed with Columbia Pictures in 1954, studio head Harry Cohn looked at her and saw a problem. Her name was too similar to Marilyn Monroe, and worse, Novak sounded too ethnic, so he simply erased Marilyn Novak and created Kim Novak in her place. Cohn forced her to dye her hair, restructure her walk to be more alluring, and alter her speaking voice to sound breathier. Every aspect of her Czech heritage was carefully removed. The cruelest aspect was how Cohn handled Novak's family. Her parents had immigrated from Czechoslovakia and spoke English with heavy accents. Cohn forbade them from attending premieres or public events, claiming they looked too foreign and would damage Kim's carefully constructed all-American image. Novak later described feeling like she was playing a role even when the cameras were not running. That Kim Novak was a character she inhabited but could never escape. After her success in Vertigo, she walked away from Hollywood at the peak of her fame. By the 2000s, Marilyn Novak, no longer Kim, had found peace. She painted, sculpted, and lived quietly with rescued animals on a ranch. Asked if she regretted leaving fame, she said, "I regret nothing." Kim Novak was a ghost. Marilyn Novak is alive. Novak's identity was stolen by a studio, but what comes next is worse. A family that staged their daughter's abduction for publicity money while she repeatedly tried to end her own life. Marie McDonald. The staged kidnapping. Marie McDonald was known in the 1940s and 50s as the Body, marketed primarily for her physical attributes. By 1957, she had attempted to end her own life 7 times, battling severe mental illness and dependencies on pills and alcohol. Each attempt became a media circus, and disturbingly, her family learned to monetize her suffering. Her husband and mother would call press photographers before calling ambulances. In January 1957, McDonald claimed she had been taken against her will and held for ransom. Police investigated thoroughly and determined the entire incident had been staged. McDonald's husband and mother had orchestrated the fake abduction to generate publicity and command higher fees for magazine interviews. When Marie McDonald finally succeeded in ending her life through an overdose in 1965, at age 42, her mother immediately contacted tabloids to sell the exclusive story. The woman who had spent the final decade of Marie's life treating her attempts at self-harm as revenue opportunities now profited one final time from her daughter's permanent passing. McDonald's family exploited her struggles with mental illness. Our next star's family did something equally grotesque. They fabricated her entire cause of passing to maintain a glamorous image. Lupe Velez, the passing that wasn't glamorous. The official story of Lupe Velez's passing in December 1944 became Hollywood legend. The Mexican actress had supposedly staged an elaborate act of self-harm, wearing a beautiful gown, arranging flowers, and leaving this world peacefully after taking sleeping pills. There was only one problem. None of it was true. The first responders who actually found Velez told a very different story. Their reports documented that Velez had taken a large dose of Seconal pills, but instead of passing peacefully, she had a violent physical reaction. She became ill, stumbled to the bathroom, and lost her life in the toilet. Within hours, her family and the studio went into action. They removed her actual clothing and dressed her body in an elegant gown. They arranged flowers in the bedroom. They cleaned up all evidence of what had actually happened. When Kenneth Anger published the true circumstances in his book Hollywood Babylon decades later, the Velez family threatened legal action. Even after her passing, the myth she never wanted persists. Velez's family lied about her passing to preserve glamour, but the next family's betrayal happened while their star was alive and fighting for her reputation in court, and her own brother testified against her. If you're discovering family betrayals that shock you in ways you never expected, hit that subscribe button because the secrets get even darker from here. Maureen O'Hara, the brother who testified against her. Maureen O'Hara built her career playing strong, independent women who refused to be intimidated. In 1957, she was forced to embody that strength when Confidential magazine published an article claiming she had been caught engaging in intimate acts in a theater. O'Hara sued for libel, staking her entire reputation on proving she was not even in the country when the alleged incident occurred. The trial became a media sensation. O'Hara presented passport stamps, airline tickets, and testimony from numerous witnesses proving she had been in Spain filming during the exact date in question. Then, her own brother James took the stand for the defense. Court transcripts document his testimony that the O'Hara family had a history of what he called moral looseness. O'Hara sat in the courtroom gallery, watching her own blood condemn her. The jury ultimately awarded O'Hara $5,000, finding that Confidential had indeed libeled her. But the financial victory meant nothing compared to the emotional devastation. O'Hara never spoke to James again for the rest of her life. O'Hara's brother testified against her in court. But what if a wife spent 20 years helping her husband hide his attraction to men, scheduling his affairs, providing alibis, playing the perfect spouse? Burt Lancaster, the wife who scheduled his affairs with men. Burt Lancaster embodied rugged masculinity on screen, his athletic physique and intense presence making him one of Hollywood's most bankable leading men. But behind the tough guy image lived a man whose romantic life was far more complex than audiences knew. Lancaster was attracted to both men and women, conducting affairs throughout his marriage to Norma Anderson. The shocking aspect was Norma's active role in facilitating them. Friends and family members interviewed by biographers revealed that Norma was fully aware of Lancaster's relationships with men, including his long-term involvement with publicist Jim Mahoney. Lancaster's closest companion, Jim Mahoney, had his own key to the Lancaster home. Norma would hear his car in the driveway and make herself scarce, sometimes for entire weekends. When the press got suspicious about Lancaster's close male friendships, Norma would provide cover stories and arrange dates with actresses to deflect attention. This arrangement lasted for more than 20 years until Norma's passing in 1988. Their children discovered the full truth only after both parents had passed away. Norma's diary, discovered after her passing, revealed the answer. Better to share Burt with men than lose him to another woman. They'll never take my place. She might. Lancaster's wife protected his secret for 20 years. But when communist accusations threatened to destroy Lucille Ball's empire, her own family testified against her, throwing her to the wolves to save themselves. Lucille Ball, the family that testified against her. Lucille Ball was America's beloved comedienne, her show I Love Lucy making her one of the most famous women in the world. In September 1953, columnist Walter Winchell revealed that Ball had registered as a communist in 1936. The revelation, during the McCarthy era, could have destroyed not just Ball's career, but the entire I Love Lucy empire. Ball testified that she had registered as a communist 17 years earlier, solely to please her socialist grandfather. She stated she had never attended meetings, never embraced communist ideology. Then several of Ball's family members, including cousins, testified that her involvement had been much deeper, that she had been an active believer. Her cousin was asked in testimony, "Did Lucy discuss communist ideology?" He replied, "Oh yes, all the time." The family members who testified against Ball were trying to save themselves. By portraying her as the true believer, they hoped to avoid being blacklisted. She survived only because of her enormous popularity and her husband Desi Arnaz's impassioned defense. Ball never forgave the family members who testified against her. She cut them off completely. The betrayal by her own family during her moment of greatest vulnerability left a permanent mark. Ball's family testified against her to save themselves. But our next star's mother did something perhaps even more unconscionable. She testified in divorce court against her own daughter, then tried to claim her estate after the daughter perished in a house fire. Linda Darnell, the mother who testified against her. Linda Darnell possessed a beauty so striking that she became one of Hollywood's most photographed actresses in the 1940s. But behind the glamorous image was a woman who had been exploited from childhood by a stage mother whose control bordered on pathology. Pearl Darnell had forced Linda into modeling at age 11 and negotiated her Hollywood contract when Linda was just 15. When Linda turned 19, Pearl arranged her marriage to 42-year-old cinematographer Peveril Marley. The marriage was essentially a business transaction that Pearl negotiated. When Linda filed for divorce, Pearl testified in court against her own daughter, supporting Marley's claims and trying to prevent Linda from gaining independence. When Linda Darnell perished tragically in a house fire in April 1965 at age 41, Pearl immediately filed paperwork to claim Linda's entire estate. Her justification was that she had managed Linda's career and therefore deserved compensation. Linda Darnell's final escape from her mother was her passing itself, but even then, Pearl tried to profit. Darnell's mother testified against her in court, then tried to claim her estate. But attempted harm in front of your own children? That's where our next story goes. And the reason Susan Hayward stayed silent will shock you. Susan Hayward, the husband who tried to harm her. Susan Hayward projected toughness on screen, playing strong-willed women who refused to be broken. In December 1953, Hayward's husband, Jess Barker, attempted to end her life during a violent confrontation at their home. Police reports documented that Barker tried to push Hayward off a second-story balcony while their twin 8-year-old sons watched in horror. Hayward had Barker arrested. Then, within 48 hours, she dropped all charges. The truth emerged only decades later through interviews with her sons. Barker had threatened to destroy Hayward's career by revealing secrets about her past, including an earlier pregnancy she had terminated. In 1953, such a revelation could have ended her career completely. The marriage finally ended in divorce in 1954, but Hayward never spoke publicly about the attempted harm until near her own passing from brain cancer in 1975. Her sons later revealed that the balcony incident was not isolated. They had witnessed multiple violent attacks their mother had hidden. Hayward's husband tried to throw her off a balcony, but what Alfred Hitchcock did to Janet Leigh wasn't physical violence. It was 7 days of systematic psychological mistreatment that left her unable to take a shower for the rest of her life. Janet Leigh, the shower scene that broke her. Janet Leigh was already an established star when Alfred Hitchcock cast her in Psycho, but nothing in her career had prepared her for what would happen during the filming of the famous shower scene. The sequence took 7 days to film with over 70 different camera setups. What Hitchcock did during those 7 days was systematic psychological manipulation designed to create genuine terror in his actress. Leigh's own accounts in later interviews documented how Hitchcock deliberately kept her in a state of fear. He had promised warm water, but repeatedly surprised her with bursts of actual cold water. He used real theatrical blood that stained her skin and took hours to wash off. Most disturbingly, he had placed a body double in the shower with her without telling her in advance. She discovered another person's hands touching her during filming. For the remaining 46 years of her life, she could not take showers. She would only bathe in tubs with the door locked and curtain open. She experienced flashbacks and nightmares. She sought therapy, but the trauma proved too deeply embedded to fully overcome. The role that made Leigh famous had also given her a genuine psychological disorder. Janet Leigh's elegant screen presence masked a woman who could never feel safe in a shower again. Leigh's trauma came from a director who manipulated her for art. But trauma can also come from those who love you, like a mother who senses danger so clearly that she chooses to perish alongside her daughter. We're past the halfway point, and these family secrets are getting darker. What revelation has shocked you most so far? And what golden age topics should we uncover next? Share your thoughts in the comments. Carole Lombard, the mother's premonition. On January 16, 1942, Carole Lombard was at the peak of her career and happily married to Clark Gable. She had spent several days in Indiana on a war bond tour and was eager to return to California. Her mother, Elizabeth, begged her not to fly, expressing an overwhelming premonition that something terrible would happen. Lombard insisted on flying. Elizabeth's anxiety became so intense that she suggested they flip a coin to decide. Lombard flipped, and the result favored flying. At that point, Elizabeth made a decision that still haunts her surviving family members. She said if Carole was going to fly, then she would fly too because she could not let her daughter face whatever was coming alone. TWA Flight 3 crashed into Mount Potosi in Nevada, claiming the lives of all 22 people aboard, including both Lombard women. Clark Gable rushed to the crash site and had to be physically restrained from climbing the mountain. He was never the same. The final words Elizabeth had spoken to Carole before boarding were, "I told you not to fly." A mother's intuition had been tragically accurate, and her love had led her to perish alongside her daughter. Lombard's passing was a premonition fulfilled, but the next secret was hidden for 60 years. A disabled daughter whose existence was completely erased so that her father could become president. Jane Wyman, the daughter Reagan hid for 60 years. Jane Wyman built her career playing wholesome mothers and won an Academy Award for Johnny Belinda. She had been married to Ronald Reagan, who would eventually become president. What audiences never knew was that Wyman and Reagan had a first child together, a daughter named Maureen Elizabeth Reagan, born prematurely in 1941 with significant developmental disabilities. Rather than raise Maureen publicly, Wyman and Reagan placed her in a private institution shortly after her birth. Even after Reagan became governor and then president, Maureen's existence was never acknowledged publicly. A nurse who had cared for Maureen revealed that Wyman had called the facility once in 1952 on Maureen's 11th birthday. She asked how the child was doing, listened silently, then said thank you and never called again. Maureen Elizabeth Reagan passed away in 2001 at age 59, having spent nearly her entire life institutionalized. Jane Wyman attended the funeral but provided no statement. Reagan built his political career partly on family values while keeping his first daughter hidden away. Wyman hid a living daughter for political reasons, but greed can be just as powerful as shame, as Hedy Lamarr discovered when her own son stole the royalties from her world-changing invention. Hedy Lamarr, the son who stole her invention. Hedy Lamarr was known to movie audiences as one of Hollywood's most beautiful women, starring in films like Samson and Delilah. What audiences did not know was that Lamarr possessed a brilliant scientific mind. During World War II, she worked with composer George Antheil to develop a frequency-hopping spread spectrum technology designed to prevent jamming of radio-controlled torpedoes. They received a patent in 1942, but the Navy dismissed the invention as impractical. Decades later, technology companies discovered that Lamarr's innovation was the foundation for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS technologies, inventions worth billions billions of dollars. When royalties finally began flowing in the 1990s, her son Anthony Loder and her third husband's estate were intercepting the money through legal mechanisms that took advantage of Lamarr's age. Lamarr spent her final years in legal battles trying to receive compensation for her own invention while living in near poverty. She passed away in January 2000, having received almost nothing from technology that had generated billions in revenue. Her son inherited what little remained, never acknowledging his role in depriving his elderly mother of the rewards she had earned. Lamarr's son stole her money. But what Ginger Rogers' mother stole was far more fundamental. Her daughter's entire identity, every decision, every choice for 66 years. Ginger Rogers, the mother who controlled everything. Ginger Rogers danced with Fred Astaire and created some of Hollywood's most iconic moments, seemingly the embodiment of independence. But behind every graceful movement was her mother, Leigh Rogers, who controlled every aspect of Ginger's existence for 66 years. Biographers and Ginger's own later admissions revealed that Leigh selected all 5 of Ginger's husbands. Her marriage ended when the husband began challenging Leigh's dominant role. Leigh controlled all of Ginger's finances, ensuring her daughter remained dependent. Most disturbingly, Leigh lived with Ginger throughout most of her marriages, ensuring no husband ever truly came first. When Leigh passed away in 1977, Ginger was 66 years old. Rather than feeling liberated, she experienced a profound breakdown. Friends reported that she had no idea how to make basic decisions without consulting her mother. The realization that she had lived 66 years without making a single major independent decision was psychologically devastating. Ginger spent her final 18 years trying to discover who she actually was. She took her first solo vacation at 68 to Czechoslovakia, deliberately choosing a destination Leigh would have forbidden. She learned to write checks at 70. At 75, she had her first meal alone in a restaurant and cried because she could order whatever she wanted. When she passed away in 1995, at age 83, she was still searching for an authentic self. Rogers spent 66 years under her mother's control. But what comes next involves a betrayal so twisted that it defies comprehension. A manager who was involved intimately with both a mother and daughter simultaneously for a decade. Dorothy Dandridge, the manager who was intimate with mother and daughter. Dorothy Dandridge broke barriers as the first African-American woman nominated for a Best Actress Academy Award for Carmen Jones in 1954. Her career was managed by Earl Mills, who also became her romantic partner in the early 1950s. The relationship seemed supportive until Dandridge discovered letters between Mills and her mother, Ruby. The letters revealed that Mills had been involved intimately with both Dorothy and her mother simultaneously for nearly a decade. Friends who witnessed Dandridge's discovery described the betrayal as multifaceted and devastating. Mills had been involved intimately with Ruby since the 1940s, even before becoming involved with Dorothy. Ruby had known about Mills and Dorothy's relationship and had encouraged it. The deception had lasted almost 10 years, with neither Mills nor Ruby showing any guilt. Dandridge fired Mills as her manager, but she could not escape him because he controlled her finances and contracts. The psychological damage shattered Dandridge's already fragile mental health. She struggled with depression and turned to pills and alcohol in her final years. When Dorothy Dandridge passed away from an overdose in September 1965 at age 42, both Earl Mills and Ruby Dandridge attended the funeral. Witnesses reported they stood together, their relationship continuing even after the passing of the woman they had both betrayed. If these stories have shocked you, moved you, or changed how you see Hollywood's golden age, please like this video and share it. These stars' real stories deserve to be remembered. Shelley Winters, 7 forced terminations. Shelley Winters was known for her outspoken personality and willingness to challenge Hollywood's hypocrisy. In her autobiography, she revealed having had multiple pregnancy terminations, admitting to 3. Friends and colleagues, however, stated that the real number was closer to 7 or 8 between 1945 and 1962. Winters' own accounts documented that some terminations were forced by studios who would not permit her to work while pregnant. Others were demanded by powerful lovers, including Marlon Brando and Burt Lancaster, who refused to acknowledge potential children. The most traumatic termination followed a forcible encounter by a studio executive she never publicly named. When Winters finally had her daughter Victoria at age 37 in 1959, the birth was difficult. Winters told friends that by the 7th procedure, the physician had said, "Miss Winters, your uterus can't take much more of this." She was 32 years old. Winters lived with the knowledge that she had sacrificed her fertility for men who had discarded her. The powerful men who had forced her into terminating pregnancies faced no consequences. Winters carried the physical and emotional scars alone. Winters was forced to terminate 7 pregnancies. But betrayal takes many forms, and watching your husband abandon you and your children for your best friend in front of the entire world might be the cruelest form of all. Debbie Reynolds, the best friend who stole her husband. Debbie Reynolds embodied wholesome American values in films like Singin' in the Rain, making her one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. In 1958, she was married to singer Eddie Fisher with 2 small children, Carrie and Todd Fisher. Her best friend Elizabeth Taylor was married to producer Mike Todd. The couples socialized constantly, When Mike Todd perished in a plane crash in March 1958, Fisher comforted the grieving widow Taylor. Within months, tabloids revealed that Fisher was having an affair with Taylor and planned to leave Reynolds and their children. Photographers camped outside Reynolds' home, asking her to comment on her best friend stealing her husband. The betrayal was the most public marital humiliation in Hollywood history. Reynolds survived by becoming the wronged woman America rallied behind, but the real victims were Carrie and Todd Fisher, who watched their father abandon them. Carrie Fisher would later write about the trauma of that abandonment. The shocking epilogue came decades later. Reynolds and Taylor eventually reconciled, with Reynolds famously saying she forgave Elizabeth because grief does strange things to people. But Reynolds' children never fully forgave their father. Reynolds' public betrayal eventually found forgiveness. But what if you spent 40 years maintaining a fake persona to hide depression, and when your son perished, the act finally crumbled? Dean Martin, the performer who was sober. Dean Martin built his career on a carefully crafted persona of the lovable performer, perpetually tipsy, easygoing, never taking anything too seriously. Audiences adored the image of Dean as the guy who could charm anyone with a cocktail in hand and a song on his lips. His television variety show ran for 9 years, with Dean appearing loose, relaxed, and slightly intoxicated in every episode. The Rat Pack performances with Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. cemented the image. Dean was always the cool, slightly buzzed crooner who made everything look effortless. Those closest to him, however, knew a very different truth. The man who seemed perpetually intoxicated rarely drank alcohol at all. The famous cocktail glass usually contained apple juice or ginger ale. His daughter, Deanna Martin, later revealed that her father would nurse a single drink all evening, taking tiny sips for appearance while remaining completely sober. The stumbling, the slurred words, the relaxed demeanor, all of it was acting, and he was brilliant at it. Friends and family members revealed after his passing that Martin struggled with severe depression throughout his life. The easygoing persona was armor that protected a deeply melancholy private man who struggled with feelings of emptiness and disconnection. Behind closed doors, Martin was withdrawn, quiet, and introspective. He would spend hours alone, not speaking to anyone. His children described a father who was present but emotionally distant, as if he was conserving all his energy for the performances that required him to be someone else entirely. The intoxicated act allowed him to keep people at a comfortable distance, while appearing approachable and fun. If people thought he was slightly inebriated, they didn't expect deep conversations or emotional vulnerability. They didn't ask probing questions or expect genuine intimacy. The drunk persona was the perfect shield. It made him beloved while keeping everyone at arm's length. His closest friends admitted they never really knew Dean Martin the man, only Dean Martin the performer. His son Dean Paul, whom everyone called Dino, was one of the few people who seemed to penetrate that armor. Dino had followed his father into entertainment, becoming a professional tennis player and then an actor, appearing in the television series Misfits of Science. But Dino's true passion was flying. He had joined the California Air National Guard and become a fighter pilot, flying F-4 Phantom jets. Martin was terrified every time Dino flew, but never told his son. Instead, he supported Dino's passion while privately battling anxiety about losing him. When Martin's son Dean Paul perished in a military plane crash in March 1987, the armor finally cracked completely. Dino's F-4 Phantom disappeared into a mountain during a training exercise in California. He was 35 years old. Martin was performing in Las Vegas when he received the news. Witnesses said he collapsed. He left the stage and never returned. Martin withdrew from public life almost immediately. He stopped performing, stopped socializing, and essentially locked himself in his home for the final 8 years of his life. He canceled all his remaining concert dates. He stopped answering phone calls, even from his closest friends. Frank Sinatra tried repeatedly to visit, to pull Martin out of his grief, but Martin refused to see him. His daughter Deanna would come to the house and find her father sitting alone in the dark, staring at photographs of Dino. Friends who managed to visit reported that he was unreachable, consumed by grief and profound sadness. The man who had spent decades pretending to be intoxicated now sat in genuine stupor, unable to eat, unable to sleep, unable to function. He lost weight dramatically. His health deteriorated rapidly. He told his daughter that he felt like he was waiting, just waiting for it to be over. Dean Martin passed away on Christmas Day 1995, having spent 8 years in near total isolation. The family secret that emerged after his passing was that the intoxicated persona had been an act his entire career, used to hide profound sadness. His son's passing had removed his ability to maintain the act, revealing the depression that had always existed beneath the charm. The lovable entertainer had been the performance of a lifetime by a man who could never escape his own inner darkness. In the end, the grief of losing Dino simply revealed what had always been there, a profound melancholy that he had been hiding behind apple juice in a cocktail glass for 40 years. Martin hid lifelong depression behind an intoxicated act. But what if your childhood trauma was so severe that you turned it into grace itself? Every elegant movement a triumph over starvation and horror? Audrey Hepburn, the war trauma behind her grace. Audrey Hepburn became the embodiment of elegance and grace. Her performances in films like Roman Holiday and Breakfast at Tiffany's defining sophistication for a generation. What audiences did not know was that Hepburn's famous composure had been forged in one of World War II's darkest chapters. She spent ages 11 through 16 in Nazi-occupied Holland, witnessing horrors that would haunt her for decades. The family had moved to the Netherlands in 1939, believing the country would remain neutral as it had in World War I. They were wrong. When the Nazis invaded in May 1940, Hepburn's world transformed overnight. The elegant ballet student who had dreamed of dancing professionally found herself living under brutal occupation. Her mother changed the family name and forbade Audrey from speaking English, fearing their British connections would make them targets. Hepburn's own accounts described watching resistance fighters, possibly including relatives, executed by German soldiers in the streets. She witnessed the roundup of Jewish neighbors who were deported and never returned. One of those neighbors had been a classmate, a girl her own age who simply vanished one morning. The Nazis confiscated the family's home, forcing them into increasingly smaller and more desperate living conditions. Hepburn's uncle was executed for resistance activities. Her half-brother was sent to a labor camp in Germany. During the Dutch hunger winter of 1944 to 1945, her family nearly starved. They survived by eating tulip bulbs and grass, by making flour from dried peas, and by boiling nettles for soup. Hepburn's famous thin frame was not genetics. It was the permanent physical result of childhood starvation. Her body never fully recovered from the malnutrition. The damage to her metabolism meant she struggled with anemia and respiratory problems for the rest of her life. She developed edema, painful swelling from fluid retention that would return periodically throughout her adulthood, a direct result of the starvation her body had endured. Hepburn's ballet training, which she had pursued passionately as a child, was interrupted because she was too weak from hunger to dance. When she tried to resume after the liberation, her body could not perform what her mind remembered. The wartime starvation had damaged her feet, her bones had not developed properly, and her muscles lacked the strength for professional ballet. The dream she had nurtured throughout the occupation, that she would return to dance when the war ended, died slowly as she realized her body would never recover enough for the rigorous demands of professional ballet. The grace that would later define her screen presence was reconstructed after the war through enormous effort and discipline. Every elegant movement represented a victory over the physical damage caused by starvation. Her composure was not natural sophistication, but a carefully constructed defense mechanism developed to survive occupation and trauma. The control she exercised over her body, her posture, her movements, this was how she reclaimed what the war had tried to take from her. Hepburn rarely discussed these experiences until her final years, when she began working extensively with UNICEF. Seeing starving children in developing nations reawakened her own childhood trauma, but it also gave her a purpose. She used her fame to advocate for children in war zones and famine conditions. She traveled to Ethiopia during the famine, to Somalia during the Civil War, to Bangladesh, Vietnam, and El Salvador. She saw herself in every hungry child's eyes. The girl who had eaten tulip bulbs to survive made sure other children would never know that hunger. Her UNICEF work became more than charity. It was healing. She would hold emaciated children and whisper to them in their own languages, words of comfort she had longed to hear herself during those dark winters in Holland. She raised millions of dollars, but more importantly, she raised global awareness. When she spoke about children starving, her voice carried the weight of lived experience. She saved an estimated 10,000 lives through her UNICEF work, transforming her personal suffering into action that helped thousands. When she passed away from cancer in January 1993, her UNICEF work was recognized as one of her greatest achievements. The woman who had hidden her trauma behind elegance had finally found a way to heal by helping others facing similar horrors. She died knowing that her suffering had not been meaningless, that she had used her pain to spare others from experiencing what she had endured. Hepburn's trauma shaped her grace and drove her to save thousands. And our final star's family secret is one that remains partially unsolved, a mystery that has consumed her sister for over 40 years. Natalie Wood, the sister who knows but cannot prove. When Natalie Wood lost her life by drowning off Catalina Island on November 29, 1981, her passing was ruled an accidental drowning. Her sister Lana Wood immediately suspected something far darker had occurred. Lana's statements revealed that Natalie had confided to her about husband Robert Wagner's violent, jealous rages and his intense hatred of Natalie's Brainstorm co-star, Christopher Walken. The official investigation lasted only days before being closed, but Lana never stopped questioning the circumstances. She claimed that Natalie had told her months before her passing, "If anything happens to me, it would not be an accident." In November 2011, exactly 30 years after Natalie's passing, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department reopened the investigation based on new testimony from Dennis Davern, the captain of the boat that night. Davern's account confirmed many of Lana's suspicions. He stated that Wagner and Natalie had a violent argument the night she left this world, that Wagner had been intensely jealous of Walken, and that the circumstances were far more suspicious than originally reported. In February 2018, Wagner was named a person of interest, but no charges have ever been filed. Lana Wood has spent 43 years carrying the burden of suspicion, watching Wagner remain free while her sister's passing remains officially classified as accidental drowning. She believes she knows what happened on that boat, that Wagner's rage led to Natalie's passing, but she cannot prove it. The family's secret is the truth she carries but cannot substantiate, and it is consuming her final years. These 24 stories complete our journey through Hollywood's most devastating family secrets. But they reveal something beyond individual tragedy. They show us a pattern, the collision between authenticity and image, between who these stars were and who their families, studios, and society demanded they become. The most painful pattern is this: the very people who should have protected these stars, parents, siblings, spouses, were often the ones who did the most damage. Montgomery Clift's mother sold him to wealthy men. Barbara Payton's mother sold her suffering. Jane Wyman and Ronald Reagan hid their disabled daughter. Dorothy Dandridge's mother shared her lover. These were not strangers or studio executives. These were family. Yet even in the darkest stories, resilience emerges. Piper Laurie escaped her mother's control and rebuilt her life, turning her pain into an Oscar-nominated performance. Kim Novak walked away from fame to reclaim her identity, finding peace as Marilyn on a ranch with rescued animals. Audrey Hepburn transformed her trauma into grace and humanitarian work that saved 10,000 lives. Maureen O'Hara won her court battle even after her brother's betrayal. They survived. We have honored their complicated humanity across 3 parts, 72 stories of resilience, betrayal, and ultimately survival. Their films still captivate us, but now we know the real performances were the ones they gave every day, maintaining facades that cost them everything. The stars of Hollywood's golden age shine no less brightly for having been revealed as beautifully, tragically, courageously human. Thank you for completing this journey through Hollywood's most painful family secrets. If these stories have moved you, please subscribe for more untold golden age histories. What should we explore next? The directors who destroyed their stars? The moguls who controlled everything? The stars who fought back and won? Share your ideas in the comments. Until next time, this is Golden Age Files, celebrating not just the glamour, but the full, complicated truth of the stars who built Hollywood's golden dreams. Thank you for watching.